Hey guys, Kyle here with Hornbaker Acres. So on today's video, I thought I'd just take you guys through just a normal hive inspection. So I inspect right now. I'm inspecting my hives about once every 1 or 2 weeks. There's a lot of varying opinions on not inspecting enough or inspecting too often. All I can say for certain is to make sure and inspect your hives on a regular basis, because that's the difference between being a beekeeper and a bee haver. You don't ever want to be a bee haver, you want to be a beekeeper. You want to be involved with your bees. Part of being involved with your bees is get into your hives. That's the best way for you to learn, especially if you're new. Get into your hives. Don't be too afraid of it. Yeah, you're going to get stung at some point. No matter what kind of protective gear you're wearing, you're going to get stung. That's just part of it, basically. Part of the excitement even of it. But like I said, the biggest thing is just getting into your hives. And that's good first-hand knowledge. Just looking at things, comparing them to the way they were last time, so on and so forth. Now, before I break into my colony and show you how I do my inspection, one thing I do want to note out, or show at least, is, if I can do this without messing with the camera too much, is my inspection log, basically. I think it's really handy, no matter how few hives you have. I think it's a really handy tool to have. On this inspection log, I've got a column for hive number, pretty self-explanatory, the date, queen. So on that column, I mark whether or not I find the queen. I also mark whether or not she's a marked queen or an unmarked queen, meaning that way I can keep track of my feral colonies versus my mated colonies. I'll mark whether or not I see eggs. I mark whether or not I see honey, pollen. Then there's a column for queen cells. And what I can do there is I can put in there whether or not I see any type of queen cells and what type of queen cells they are, such as a queen cup versus a swarm cell versus a supersedure cell, and so on and so forth. And then on the this side, all the way over here, I just have a blank area for various notes. It could be just this hive is really strong, this hive is really weak, I need to feed it more, or it could be a task that I completed that day. I added another deep to it. I swapped out frames, added brood to it, took brood from it, so on and so forth. And even if you have a few colonies, it's a great way to keep track of the progress of your colonies. If you keep these for a few months, you'll see the steady progression of your colonies. I think it's really great to look back through. So like I said, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to take it through a hive inspection today and kind of show you how I do it. Again, like I say all the time, this is not the way, it's just my way. There are a ton of beekeeping opinions. Choose your own path with that. So, first thing I'm looking for is activity coming out the hole in the top inner cover. Not much activity up here, but I did just put this honey super on there, so I don't expect to see too many bees up in there. I just put it in there like last week. This honey super is full of frames with just waxed foundation, so it's going to probably take them a little bit before they get used to it and want to really build on it. And we're going to go right to the middle frame where I see a little bit of activity, not much. And yeah, I don't see them working on it just yet. So I don't need to go frame by frame on this honey super just yet. They're probably still trying to fill a few empty spaces in the bottom box, bottom two boxes. But so we're going to just move that aside. Ooh, almost fell over, guys. We're going to go ahead and give them a few puffs of smoke just to move them down. Kind of let them know that we're here. And it's a little chilly this morning, so they're probably going to be a little agitated that I'm opening them up. So one thing I always do, in which pretty much every beekeeper can agree on this, you start from one end. You try to remove one of the outside frames first. Those outside frames are almost always honey frames, so it's very unlikely that the queen is going to be on one of those outside frames. And so by removing just outside frame, you have less of a chance of harming your queen. So I'm going to go ahead and move, and what I normally do is I try and move all the bees out of the way from one side with smoke, and I scoot all the frames down towards that side. It gives me more room to pull the other end frame out. So I'm just going to give them heavy smoke on this side, kind of get them to move out of that area. And then just move each frame down. I used to just come down this end and pry and push them all down at once, but what I've found is that over time, especially with buildup of propolis, I start to pull out the corners of these boxes and start to kind of damage these boxes. So as of just recently, I started doing this method where I move each frame down one at a time kind of thing. Yeah, and they're not happy that I'm in there because it's cold, and I get it, ladies. Alright, so same thing on this end. I'm going to heavy smoke on this end, try and get as many bees off this end frame as possible. So that way when I pull it out, I don't crush a bunch of bees in the process. Now I can tell these frames are pretty nicely widely drawn out. They've widened up these frames a little bit as a recent flow just kind of started. They still got a decent amount of space in here, so I probably won't expect to see anything in that honey super for another week or two. But we'll see how that goes. So as I pull this outside frame out, like I said, it's very unusual to see the queen on this outside frame, but you never know. So I check anyway. So one of the things I'm checking for is the condition of the honey stores. Are they storing nectar? Are they starting to cap it? So on and so forth. So we're going to set that right there. Sure, some pretty comb they got going on in here. Population looks good. That's another thing that I look for is I'm looking at overall population. Now this is interesting. I'm seeing some nice dark honey or nectar at this point going in. You guys can see that dark nectar going in. And they're starting to cap it. That's a good sign. And so on this frame, I'm already seeing drone larvae, that large comb in the middle that looks white. There's no way to pick it up on camera, but there's actually larvae in the middle of that. So that means that the queen's really laying out some drones, which means that she's all the way to almost outside frames. So that, like I said, you got to be cautious. Another thing, as I go along, during my inspection, I'm going to start scraping some of this burr comb off, this comb that is just kind of out of sorts. The more you keep up with it, the easier it is. The less damage you do by just taking the little chunks that you find here and there off when you find it, instead of having to deal with big messes and big globs of it. Other things I'm looking for is making sure they're bringing in pollen, or at least they have pollen stored. On some of these outside frames, I'm also looking for swarm cells. And again, every single frame, I'm looking for that queen. This is a pretty heavy frame of nectar. It's pretty much solid nectar, and I got a little bit more burr comb, or that random comb down here at the bottom. I'm going to just pinch off and move over here. Looking real nice though. As I put these frames back in, I'm putting them all over to one side, being careful not to squash a whole bunch of bees. biggest thing with beekeeping is just being gentle and purposeful, if that's even a word at this point, but just moving with purpose, but being gentle. Also, as I pull these frames out, I want to make sure I'm not bumping them all on the ends and on the sides, because again, you just never know where your queen's going to be. So again, here's some worker brood, larvae, and eggs. That's a good sign. So if I see eggs, that means that my queen has been in this box within the last 3 days. And my concern for that always is making sure that these ladies didn't swarm out. That's another thing I'm looking for is, queen cells, making sure that they're not getting ready to swarm. But I'm seeing eggs in here, so I know since eggs hatch out at 3 days, I know that my queen has been in here within the last 3 days. Another thing I'm looking for is the pattern, the brood pattern. What you want is a pretty solid, this one has a pretty solid brood pattern. Nice, large, brood pattern, this whole bottom section with a strip of honey. As I go more and more towards the middle of the box, I should see more and more brood on each frame. Should. We will see though. If I start seeing what they call shotgun brood, a shotgun brood pattern where it's just random brood here and there and patches here and there, one theory is that's kind of a sign of a failing queen, and you may need to do something about it. So again, I'm just going to go through every single one of these frames, frame by frame, and look for these different signs of, so this frame has even more brood on it. At least on that side. And I'm seeing some queen cups. So when I start seeing queen cups, I'm going to start looking at them. And right now I don't see any eggs in any queen cups so far. Some colonies tend to build out more queen cups than others. Some just, no matter how often you crush, I used to just crush every queen cup I saw, thinking that would deter them from swarming. But then it seems like that they would just build them right back, but never actually fill them with anything. So it seems to me some colonies just like to be prepared and have queen cups available if they need it. Again, pulling each frame by frame, very cautiously, very carefully, making sure I'm not bumping the side and accidentally squashing my queen. Still lots of good brood in this frame, so this colony's looking real strong. I'm real happy with it. Haven't spotted my queen yet, but again, because I saw eggs and I haven't seen any hatched out or formed actual swarm cells, then I'm not too concerned with it. Not too concerned about spotting my queen every time. As long as there's eggs, there's been a queen within the last 3 days. So that's basically it, guys. I'm going to continue on from here, get the rest of these colonies knocked out. But again, I'm just going to go frame by frame, making mental notes, making sure that I see things like eggs, I see pollen, I see honey. I'm checking for queen cups, queen cells. I'm checking the brood pattern. I'm making just mental notes of the overall state of the hive. This is a pretty strong hive. As you can tell, they're a little testy. That might be something that I'm going to note on there, a little testy, but again, that could be because of the temperature. It's, I think, in the mid-60s right now, a little cool for these Arizona bees. But I'm just making mental notes. Could be that they still have a lot of empty frames to build. That could be a note that I put in there. Just lots of things. That way it kind of keeps track of the progress, and I can honestly kind of keep track of the quality of the queen. Especially if I get a mated queen from a company that I've never really dealt with before, and I kind of use this as a testing method. I can keep track of the progress of this colony, how quickly they build and how healthy they are, the brood patterns, so on and so forth. And so I'm a big advocate in taking notes. Even when I only had just 1-2 colonies, I took notes because I like to see that. I like that visual representation of my progress, or to see a failing hive, you start to see a trend. So if you got any questions, make sure you comment below. As I always ask, please like, share, subscribe. We're looking for more subscribers. We're going to be continuing new videos all the time. We got tons of video ideas. So look for more in the future, all right? Take care, guys. Happy beekeeping.
Mm-hmm.